Hey guys, so I want to come out here and do, as you could probably tell, this second follow-up to my first follow-up that I did on this topic. And the reason I want to do this is because the Triforce kid, about 9 hours ago, around 2 o'clock, actually 10 hours now, corrected me just like Trains fan had corrected me beforehand, but did so with more information. Probably more information than even myself, Trains fan, game apologist, the people at the Sonic Speed channel with the Archie Sonic Digest podcast, could even imagine, or at least consider. But his reply, believe it or not, I copied and pasted it, results basically in 2 pages worth of one comment, one reply on my follow-up video. But this is what the Triforce kid had to say in response to my first follow-up video to this topic. This is what he had to say, and I quote: "The thing is, though, Ken Penders didn't write that story because he wanted to." He puts quotations between the words "because he wanted to." He was going to write that story because, and then he puts this in caps, Archie Comics told him to write a more, and he puts this in quotations, a more mature story arc for an older audience, because Archie Comics wanted to test the waters for an aging demographic. You heard that right. Basically, according to the Triforce kid, the information he has is that Ken Penders wasn't writing that story because he wanted to, just write it for the heck of it, see what he can get away with. He was writing it because Archie Comics told him to write it because they wanted to test the waters with an older audience by having, a more mature story supplied for them to read. He continues on, and I quote, "They want to try and write teen drama stories for the comics, but at the last minute, likely while Ken was writing said story, Archie got cold feet and chose to stick with the younger audience or demographic." And that is pretty much something that, is still present to this day. That, just when you think, a company is going to, do something, is going to jump at doing something to, get people talking about the product, even though it might be controversial, that's when they decide to pull back. They decide to pull back on the reins and be like, nah, maybe that's not a good idea. And here, obviously, Archie Comics, if what Triforce Kid is saying is somewhat true, and it sounds like there is a lot more information that he knows about, like I said earlier, then I could see why Archie Comics would get cold feet. It's not because of the fact that they wanted to stick to the younger demographic, no. And it's not the fact that they weren't, confident they couldn't maybe get a more older demographic invested, especially the original fan base was growing up. No, it was mostly the fact that I believe the reason they got cold feet is because they knew that had this been done, it would automatically get straight to Sega. And Sega would have said, "We're done with you. That's it." And that's the fact. That's a true fact. I don't think anybody can deny that. That the reason they got cold feet, in my opinion, is because of the fact that they knew that once that was done, it would probably get into the ears of Sega, and Sega would be like, "We're done with you. We're going elsewhere." And that'd be the end of the comic way before it originally ended about, 2017. So, yeah, I think that's why, in my opinion, they got cold feet. Not because they weren't confident they couldn't do it. It's because of the fact that they knew that if they did, it would get to Sega, and Sega would cut ties with them once and for all. And that's pretty much the truth. And it would also damage their reputation for a chance to acquire any other licensing in for a comic book adaptation of any other IPs out there. So, with that said, we continue on, and I quote the Triforce Kid. "The basic gist of it is that Ken was literally told by his bosses to write something for mature audiences. And that's what he was choosing to write, because teen drama," and he puts this and he puts these, I think, parentheses. He says, because teen dramas are full of that kind of writing if you pay any attention to such things. In other words, referencing stuff like, let's say, Twilight, and all those other kind of, films and stuff and stories and novels at that time, if you will. Continuing on, and I quote, he says, as for the reboot and the infamous slap scene, those were executive decisions by Mike Pellerito, or Mike P., whom for a good while was an editor in training under Freddie Gaber. Then became head editor, then became president of Archie Comics. Continuing on, and I quote, keep in mind that even after Archie tried to sue him, not the other way around, Archie ended up hiring him back on, which means that Archie themselves didn't have any bad blood sentiments against Penders, because clearly they realized they effed up in trying to sue him after failing to realize that the Copyright Office had been trying to contact them over his copyright claims for months, and they simply failed to respond to anything, which gave Penders a clear-cut go-ahead to keep copyrighting his material. And then Archie got wind of him trying to use his IP for the Lala Sue Chronicles and tried to sue him after that fact, even in Ken's own words, bringing up forged documents that Penders had never seen or signed that inexplicably had his signature on them, likely photoshopped in an effort for the company to save face after losing 2 other lawsuits in the past 30 years for the same reason. Continuing on, and I quote, told you this is about 2 pages worth. It wasn't until Mike became president that forced contrived quote-unquote soft reboot. Seriously, how the hell does anyone in their right mind call retconning 25 years of lore a soft reboot anyway? Simple. You still keep some semblance of the original continuity and world, as well as you're also utilizing the characters, having them remember that old world to an extent until, the time is right for that to be completely forgotten. That's how you do it. But anyway, continuing on, rereading this, and I quote, it wasn't until Mike became president that forced contrived a soft reboot. Seriously, how the hell does anyone in their right mind call retconning 25 years of lore a soft reboot anyway? And after Scott Fulop also sued, citing that he too has never signed a WHF contract, and lo and behold, Archie's lawyers couldn't find, quote-unquote, that contract anywhere, either lending credence to Penders saying that he never signed one to begin with either. Archie, that Mike clearly got, butthurt about losing 2 back-to-back lawsuits, one which he wasn't even president of Archie for yet, and forced a retcon to erase all non-Sonic characters from the lore of the comics, and then, to add insult to injury, spitefully canceled the series on multiple cliffhangers, and tossed the writers and artists under the bus and said, blame them, it's their fault, not mine, yet he's the one who made the executive and editorial decisions that led to the series cancellation. Continuing on, and I quote, and I myself do not like, let me reread that, and I quote, and I myself do not really like Flint's writing. It's got potential, but he relies too much on Sherlock, and rehashing stories from other media. Seriously, the Dunbar arc was literally just The Walking Dead with Sonic characters. But he doesn't deserve any blame for the retcon or reboot, aside from not being exactly the most creative with the Genesis Wave arc. His only crime, really, was being caught up in the crap storm that ensued as a result of Mike's stupidity and arrogance as an editor, forcing him and others to write in things like The Slap, really terrible, rapey story arcs, with Scourge getting with a slew of characters who didn't know he really wasn't Sonic. Talk about cringe. Mike's the guy everyone should be mad at. Not Penders, not Flynn, not Fulop, not any of the artists or writers. Just Flynn for being the jackass who made all the wrong decisions and ultimately canceling the series is because he was a sore loser. I don't know why he said just Flynn for being the jackass. Okay, just yeah. He says just Flynn for being the jackass who made all the wrong decisions and ultimately canceling the series because he was so a loser. So what I'm getting out of this, as I check something there, what I'm getting out of this, and like I said, this is about 2 pages worth of content right here, guys. Look at that. That's unbelievable. 2 pages worth of content. What I'm getting out of this, from what the Triforce kid is saying, is it's not it's not really much. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is what Triforce kid is pointing out is it's not necessarily all of Ken's fault. It's not necessarily all Carl's fault. It's not all of Ian's fault. It's not all of Scott's fault or anybody's fault that wrote and drew for the comic. That the person ultimately is Mike Pellerito, Mike P. Because of the fact that he's the one that ordered Ken, and I'm sure some other writers like Carl, to write more mature stories for the book, involving the characters, even to the point one of those books would be, or one of those stories in the books would be Jeffrey taking Sally's innocence. I can see where Triforce Kid is coming from here, because if you are the editor, basically, if you're an editor in training, you're learning from the guy you're going to take over for, the guy or the girl you're taking over for, or when it's all said and done, but as the editor, and then eventually maybe, in this case, the president, you do have the final say in some things. You do have the, control to basically tell your writers, freelanced or not, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to take I want you to do this. I want you to take the comic in this direction. I want you to create these kind of stories. You have that right. You have that power. Even if you don't realize that, what you're asking them to do is go in a direction of, someone having their innocence taken, having, a doppelganger posing as the original, sleeping and hitting on all different all different main female characters, supporting female characters. You're not realizing that basically in the end, you asking for this, it's fine and everything. You have the power to do it. But what you're doing is you're asking for it to be done in a licensed comic in which your main purpose is to tell a story about a group of anthropomorphic characters trying to beat a tyrannical, sinister, at times sadistic, evil scientist who's trying to take over the world. And by going off in a different direction because, hey, teen dramas are a thing and we want to try it out, that's not the best decision. And I can understand, again, why I think Archie Comics got cold feet, in my opinion. It wasn't the fact that they probably didn't have confidence that it couldn't be done and, that it wouldn't be a success. It probably would have been, honestly. And it probably would have got people talking. Despite the fact that a lot of us would probably be going like, at the notion. But the reason, again, like I said, that they got cold feet is because they knew that if they went through with it, it would get back to Sega, and Sega would wipe their hands of Archie and go elsewhere way before they did in 2017. And it would also hurt their reputation, overall, and even a chance at acquiring the rights to publish other comic books for other established IPs. So, what did Mike do? Apparently, according to Triforce Kid, Mike basically made sure certain things were put in there that were not necessary. The slap, if you will, as he put, as he acknowledged, evil Sonic, anti-Sonic, later known as Scourge, acting like his doppelganger, sleeping with all the girls, or messing around, fooling around with all these girls like Bunny and Mina and Amy and Fiona, even though apparently, according to Ian Flynn's take on it, Fiona pretty much knew, that this wasn't the real Sonic. To the point of other situations out there, it's like you can understand why someone like Triforce Kid would want to basically say that the ultimate blame goes to Mike. because of the fact that he was the one calling the shots. Not just as editor, but ultimately as president. And the fact that he basically says that it was Mike that basically said, okay, we're done with this comic. I don't want to deal with this anymore because there's no way I'm going to, win any kind of lawsuit or any other future lawsuit that will come our way. Let's just end it and that's it. And the fact that if what he's saying has some truth to it about him throwing everybody under the bus, including Ian, and saying, hey, blame them, not me, then yeah, maybe Mike shouldn't have been, the editor in chief, or even trained for that position in the first place. Nor should he be running a comic book company if he can't accept, he can't accept defeat, or he can't accept certain losses, or can't work out certain deals with people, in the end. And that's just my dog. She's waking up from a nap. Like I've said before in videos, she has allergies. She's okay. But like I said, maybe he shouldn't be president of a company if he doesn't know how to accept losses and basically move on and work around them. But, it's still just like with everybody putting the blame on Ken, putting the blame on Carl, someone putting the blame on Ian to an extent. Again, the debate is up. Is Mike now the one to truly blame and not Penders? That's a good question to ask and wonder about. But what do you guys think? Do you think Triforce Kid is correct? Let me know down below in the comment section, as well as in the live chat during the premiere, where super chats and super stickers are open and would be appreciated. Also check me out at BW Russell's Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations, except for Pandora. Also check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get here on YouTube due to copyright. Also check me out at Teespring, to my Teespring store to find merchandise there you can't get anywhere else. Also check me out at deviantart.com/BVW1979. Also check me out at patreon.com/BWRoses. Also check me out at Venmo at Brian-Warmer-2 to help support me there, and at Cash App at BWRoses98. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. How do you feel about it? Do you agree with Triforce Kid here? Do you think Mike deserves more of the blame than anybody? Let me know down below, as I can say in the live chat during the premiere, and I'm out.